There is a strange assumption people make about those who have few friends. They look at a person sitting alone and immediately decide that something must be wrong. Perhaps they are antisocial. Perhaps they are difficult. Perhaps nobody likes them. But human behavior is rarely that simple. Some people are alone because they have been rejected. Others are alone because they have rejected the shallow world around them. And some are alone because they have learned, through experience, that not everyone deserves access to their mind, their emotions, or their trust. Some people become comfortable relying on themselves long before they realize what is happening. At first, it may begin with something simple. They learn to solve their own problems because nobody else is available. They make their own decisions because waiting for approval becomes exhausting. They spend time alone because the people around them do not understand them, disappoint them, or demand too much from them. Slowly, independence stops being a temporary condition and becomes part of their identity. This is one of the most common traits found in people who have few or no close friends. They have learned how to function without constant support. They do not need someone to tell them what to do before they move. They do not need a group to validate every decision. They can enter a room alone, make a decision alone, and continue their journey even when nobody applauds. To many people, this kind of independence is uncomfortable to witness. Society teaches us to measure our value through connection. We are often encouraged to be surrounded by people, to constantly communicate, to maintain large circles, and to appear socially active. But a person who can stand alone challenges this idea. They reveal something many people do not want to admit. Sometimes, the fear of being alone is stronger than the desire for genuine connection. The independent person has often learned that dependence creates vulnerability. When you need someone desperately, they gain power over your emotions. Their approval can become your reward. Their rejection can become your punishment. Their silence can control your mood. After experiencing this enough times, some people make a decision, consciously or unconsciously. I will never give another person that much power over me. So they become self-sufficient. They stop explaining every choice. They stop asking permission to follow their own path. They begin to trust their own judgment more than the opinions of the crowd. This can create an extraordinary level of inner strength. While others are waiting for encouragement, the independent person is already moving. While others are afraid of criticism, the independent person has become accustomed to being misunderstood. But every strength has a shadow. Independence can slowly become emotional isolation. A person who has survived alone may eventually begin to believe that they must always survive alone. They may reject help even when it is offered sincerely. They may see vulnerability as weakness. They may refuse to express their needs because they have trained themselves to never need anything from anyone. This is where independence becomes dangerous. There is a difference between being capable of standing alone and believing that you must never allow anyone to stand beside you. The first is strength. The second can become a prison. A truly independent person does not reject connection. They simply refuse to become a slave to it. They can appreciate friendship without desperately depending on it. They can accept help without surrendering their identity. They can love people without allowing those people to control their entire emotional world. This is the balance most people never learn. The goal is not to become so independent that nobody can reach you. The goal is to become so internally secure that you can choose relationships from desire rather than desperation. When you are desperate for company, you will accept almost anyone. When you are comfortable alone, you become more selective about who deserves your time. This is why people who have few friends can sometimes appear difficult to understand. They are not necessarily lonely in the way others imagine. They may simply have learned to enjoy their own company. They have discovered that silence can be more peaceful than forced conversation, and solitude can be more honest than a relationship built on convenience. But the wise person remains self-aware. They constantly ask themselves, am I alone because I genuinely value my peace, or because I am afraid to trust again? That question separates healthy independence from emotional armor, because the strongest person is not the one who needs absolutely nobody. The strongest person is the one who knows they can survive alone, yet remains open enough to recognize genuine loyalty when it appears. They do not chase people, but they do not automatically reject them either. They understand that independence is not about building walls around yourself. It is about building a foundation strong enough that you can open the door by choice. Not because you are afraid of being alone. Some people move through life watching more than they speak. While others are busy trying to be noticed, they are studying what is happening beneath the surface. They listen to the words people use, but they pay even closer attention to the pauses, the changes in tone, the sudden shifts in behavior, and the contradictions between what someone says and what they actually do. This intense observation is one of the traits often found in people who have few close friends. They may not be the loudest person in the room. They may not participate in every conversation. They may sit quietly while everyone else is competing for attention. But silence does not mean they are unaware. In many cases, they are processing more than anyone realizes. A highly observant person understands that human beings rarely reveal themselves through words alone. People can say they are loyal while acting selfishly. They can claim to be confident while constantly seeking approval. They can talk about honesty while hiding important truths. They can smile warmly while secretly resenting the person standing in front of them. The observant person watches these patterns. They notice who only appears when they need something. They notice who treats powerful people differently from ordinary people. They notice who constantly criticizes others for behaviors they secretly display themselves. They notice how a person reacts when they are denied, corrected, ignored, or challenged. These moments reveal more than polite conversation ever could. This is why highly observant people often take longer to trust. They do not simply listen to what someone promises. They wait to see whether behavior confirms the promise. They understand that anyone can perform kindness for a short period of time. Anyone can appear loyal when everything is going well. The real character of a person often emerges when they are frustrated, disappointed, or given an opportunity to take advantage of someone. But this ability to observe can create distance. When you begin seeing patterns in human behavior, you may find it difficult to return to innocence. Once you notice manipulation, you cannot pretend it does not exist. Once you recognize false friendship, you may become cautious around people who remind you of it. Once you understand how easily people change depending on what they want, you may stop accepting words at face value. This can make social life more complicated. The highly observant person may enter a friendship and immediately notice small inconsistencies. They may recognize when someone is becoming jealous. They may detect when a compliment is actually an insult disguised as kindness. They may sense when a friend is competing with them while pretending to support them. Sometimes they are correct, but sometimes observation can become overanalysis. A person who has been disappointed repeatedly may begin searching for hidden motives everywhere. They may interpret every delayed reply as rejection, every disagreement as betrayal, and every mistake as evidence of bad intentions. In this way, the gift of observation can become a source of suspicion. The difference between wisdom and paranoia is often the ability to remain open to evidence. A wise person observes patterns, but does not immediately declare judgment. They watch. They wait. They allow time to reveal what a single moment cannot. They understand that one mistake does not define a person, but repeated behavior often does. This is where true social intelligence begins. You do not need to believe everything people say, but you also do not need to assume everyone is lying. You do not need to trust immediately, but you do not need to reject everyone before they have shown you who they are. The power of observation is not merely seeing the weaknesses of others. It is also seeing yourself clearly. The same person who studies manipulation in others must ask whether they sometimes manipulate. The same person who notices arrogance must examine their own pride. The same person who recognizes dishonesty must be willing to confront their own excuses. Without self-awareness, observation becomes judgment. With self-awareness, it becomes wisdom. People who spend a great deal of time alone often develop this ability because solitude gives them time to reflect. They replay conversations. They analyze behavior. They ask why people act the way they do. They become students of human nature, sometimes without realizing it. And the more they observe, the less interested they become in surface appearances. They begin to understand that people reveal themselves gradually, not through one dramatic confession, but through repeated choices, through how they treat those who cannot benefit them, through what they do when nobody is watching, through the way they behave when their ego is threatened. The person who learns to observe without becoming consumed by suspicion gains a rare advantage. They become harder to manipulate, slower to deceive, and more capable of choosing relationships based on reality rather than fantasy. Trust is not something everyone gives away freely. For some people, it is earned slowly, through time, consistency, and repeated proof. This is especially true for individuals who have few close friends. They may not dislike people, and they may not be incapable of forming relationships. Instead, they have learned that access to their personal world should not be given to everyone who asks for it. In a world where people often connect quickly, share personal information immediately, and call someone a friend after only a short period of time, the selective person moves differently. They watch before they open up. They listen before they reveal themselves. They allow time to expose what words cannot. They understand that trust is not built through one impressive conversation. It is built through patterns. Anyone can be charming for a day. Anyone can be supportive when everything is easy. Anyone can promise loyalty when there is something to gain. But consistency is more difficult to fake. The selective person understands this. They watch how someone behaves over time. Do they keep their word? Do they respect boundaries? Do they treat people well when there is no reward? Do they remain loyal when the person they claim to support is not in the room? These questions matter more than dramatic promises. People who have experienced betrayal often become more careful with trust. Perhaps they once opened up too quickly and discovered that their vulnerability was used against them. Perhaps they gave loyalty to someone who returned it only when convenient. Perhaps they were repeatedly disappointed by people who said one thing and did another. After such experiences, a person may begin to protect their inner world more carefully. They no longer confuse friendliness with loyalty. They no longer assume that someone who laughs with them is truly on their side. They no longer believe that every person who shows interest genuinely cares about them. This can be a form of wisdom. But selective trust has a darker side when it becomes absolute distrust. A person can become so focused on protecting themselves that they reject everyone before anyone has the opportunity to prove themselves. They may create tests that nobody knows they are taking. They may expect betrayal so strongly that they interpret ordinary mistakes as evidence of hidden hostility. At that point, protection begins to control the person. There is a difference between having standards and building impossible barriers. Standards protect your peace. Barriers can prevent connection entirely. The mature person understands that trust should be given gradually, not blindly. You do not need to reveal your deepest secrets to someone you barely know. You do not need to place your future in the hands of a person who has not demonstrated reliability. You do not need to ignore warning signs simply because you want a relationship to work, but you also do not need to demand perfection. Every human being will eventually disappoint you in some way. People forget things. They make mistakes. They misunderstand situations. They sometimes act selfishly. The question is not whether someone will ever fail you. The question is what they do afterward. Do they take responsibility? Do they learn? Do they attempt to repair the damage? Or do they blame you, repeat the behavior, and expect you to tolerate it indefinitely? This is where selective trust becomes intelligent. You are not judging people by a single moment. You are studying patterns. You are allowing time to reveal character. You are giving people room to demonstrate who they are without forcing yourself to ignore what you see. The person with few friends often understands something many people learn only after years of pain. Access is a privilege. Your time is limited. Your attention is limited. Your emotional energy is limited. If you give these resources to everyone, you will eventually have nothing left for yourself. This does not mean becoming cold. It means becoming conscious. You can be kind without being accessible to everyone. You can forgive someone without trusting them in the same way again. You can wish someone well while understanding that they no longer belong in your inner circle. Real trust is not created by pressure. It is created by consistency. The people who deserve a place in your life are not always the most charming, impressive, or socially popular. Often, they are the ones whose behavior remains stable when circumstances change. They respect your boundaries when you say no. They do not punish you for having your own life. They do not require you to constantly prove your loyalty while offering none in return. The selective person understands that a small circle can be more valuable than a large one. One trustworthy relationship can provide more peace than dozens of connections built on performance. The challenge is to remain selective without becoming completely closed. Protect your trust, but do not worship your walls. Observe people, but allow them the opportunity to prove themselves. Remember what the past taught you, but do not force every new person to pay for the crimes of someone who came before them. True emotional strength is not trusting everyone. It is knowing who has earned your trust, who has lost it, and who has not yet had the opportunity to prove themselves. Some people can spend hours alone without feeling empty. They do not need constant conversation, endless notifications, or a crowded social calendar to feel that life has meaning. Their minds are already active. They think, imagine, question, create, analyze, and explore ideas that other people may never see. This powerful inner world is another trait often found in people who have few close friends. To the outside world, such a person may appear distant. They may not attend every gathering. They may not feel the need to join every conversation. They may prefer reading, creating, learning, walking, thinking, or simply sitting in silence. Others may look at this behavior and assume that the person is lonely. But loneliness and solitude are not the same thing. Loneliness is the painful feeling of being disconnected from the connection you desire. Solitude is the ability to be alone without feeling that something is missing. One is a wound. The other can become a source of strength. People with a powerful inner world often do not need constant external stimulation because their minds provide enough activity. They can take a simple idea and explore it for hours. They can replay a conversation and discover meanings they missed before. They can imagine possibilities, build plans, create stories, study human behavior, or reflect on their own experiences. Their life does not stop when the room becomes quiet. In fact, silence may be where they think most clearly. This is one reason they may have fewer friends. They do not always feel pressured to fill every empty moment with people. They may understand that constant social activity can sometimes be a way of escaping yourself. A person can be surrounded by hundreds of people and still be completely unfamiliar with their own thoughts. The individual with a strong inner world often chooses differently. They are willing to sit with themselves. They are willing to experience boredom without immediately running from it. They are willing to ask difficult questions about their life, their choices, their fears, and their future. This creates depth. But depth can also create distance. When a person spends a great deal of time thinking, they may become frustrated by conversations that remain entirely on the surface. They may struggle with small talk. They may become impatient with repetitive social rituals. They may prefer one meaningful conversation to an entire evening of empty interaction. This does not necessarily mean they believe they are better than others. Sometimes they simply have a different appetite for connection. They want conversations that reveal something. They want to understand what people believe, what they fear, what they desire, and what experiences shape them. They are often less interested in what someone owns than in what someone thinks. Less interested in popularity than in character. But there is a danger here as well. A powerful inner world can become a comfortable escape from reality. A person may spend so much time thinking about life that they stop participating in it. They may create imaginary relationships instead of building real ones. They may analyze every possible outcome until they are too afraid to act. Thought can become a refuge, but it can also become a prison. The healthiest person learns to move between inner and outer worlds. They value solitude, but they do not use it to hide permanently. They enjoy their own thoughts, but they remain willing to listen to the thoughts of others. They protect their peace, but they do not confuse peace with complete isolation. The real strength of a powerful inner world is that it gives a person something nobody else can permanently take away. People may leave, circumstances may change, plans may fail, social approval may disappear, but a person who has developed their mind still possesses a source of meaning within themselves. This is why some people do not desperately chase friendships. They are not necessarily against connection. They simply refuse to believe that their existence becomes meaningless without constant attention from others. They can enjoy company without depending on it for their identity. They can appreciate friendship without allowing friendship to define their value. They can walk into a room alone without feeling that they have failed. However, the wise person understands that the inner world should not become an excuse to avoid all human connection. Humans are shaped through interaction. Other people challenge our beliefs, expose our blind spots, and sometimes reveal parts of ourselves that solitude cannot show us. You may understand yourself deeply, but another person can still teach you something about who you are. The goal is not to choose between solitude and connection. It is to become capable of both. A person with a powerful inner world does not need to be surrounded by people every moment. They can stand alone, think deeply, and protect their mental space. But when they meet someone genuine, they are capable of recognizing the value of that connection. They do not need a crowd to feel complete. They need only enough self-awareness to understand the difference between being alone by choice, and being alone because fear has made every connection impossible.